Hey everyone, welcome back to High Tower Stitching with Stephanie, and welcome back to part 3 of our Churn Dash project, the quilt. Almost 2/3 of the way through this project, and I have 3 things I'd like to share with you, and one of those is a half triangle square. The second one is looking at the rounds of fabric and blocks, and the third one is looking at the borders. Here is one of the 5.5-inch Churn Dash blocks. And what's funny is, look at it right now. Okay? Now look at it. Did they look different to you? They're exactly the same, but there's still something different. And I found that out when I started putting the blocks together for the quilt. In the meantime, I started and I would make my shapes, and then I'd go cut some more out and I'd sew them together till I had a nice stack, and that's what we talked about last time, so that I could do the first round around the center. But the first thing I wanted to do was go back and let's look at those squares that you put together. You put 2 squares face to face, and then you cut them. Well, that magazine was in 2012, and I decided, looking back at the half triangle squares, might be a little more efficient, or even make the shapes fit a little better if we looked at that. So I want to quickly go through that with you. So when I made my squares and I stacked them face to face, then I took and I drew a line from point to point, and then went out 1/4 inch on each side. And I just happened to have bought a set for $5 of a couple of these tools, which has really come in handy. And you just line it up and draw on the outside edges. You don't really need the middle. I just do that to have a straight line to cut through the center. So that's step 1. And then, if you look at the aqua line, I tried to make something that might really show up. If you look real close, you'll notice that I am not on the line. I am to the inside because I want a few more threads to help it make it easier for this to fit together really well. If you go too far on that line, or to the right or left of that line, you're going to find out that your square is going to turn out to be pretty skimpy. So the thing is to take and sew inside of the outside lines. The third step is simply take your scissors and cut up that center line there. And if you didn't make a center line, just cut where you think the center is, all the way from the bottom to the top. And this is one of my hints for you. These were my 2 parts that have been cut apart. And if you look at the top, I've made a black mark for you. If you'll take that and go in that same direction, take your scissors and cut that off at that angle going that way. You'll probably want to make yourself a sample so that you can look at it, and then turn it and then take off the others. When you get ready to use that piece, you iron it open. Where we had those puppy ears before, well, you're going to have those cut off, and then a little bit extra that makes it fit together. So now I have a planning floor, not a planning wall, and we're in the room where I'm working, and here are the ones that I haven't used, and I have those set out. And I made sure that I kept some from the very beginning, and just kept adding on to the other. What I wanted to show you was how nice that chocolate color is working with this, and I was glad that I did that. And then when you get ready to put on the chocolate, you put on the 2 sides, and then you put the top and the bottom on. And if you remember, don't cut it exactly the length that they had. And I'll tell you why in a minute, because I was absolutely right on that. But I take and I mark it, and then I add a little bit more to it, and I see how both ends are doing and how close they're coming to being the same. And everything went really good. And then I got ready to do this last brown that you're looking at there. And I found out that instead of 40 inches, I've got 41 inches. Well, the odd thing is both ends have 40 inches, and I'm just going to leave that and put the strip on and keep going. Well, in the meantime, I've also been working on the next row that goes around the outside and trying to make sure that I don't use up all of the good things, all the good colors that I want to use in between there. When I got ready to put the brown strip on, I went and pinned on each end, and then I sort of got an idea where the middle was, but I sort of just laid it out and stretched a little bit, because you have some stretch. If you need some in your rows of blocks, you've got some. If you cut this with the straight grain, going with the selvage, which is what I do, then you're not going to have much stretch with the border, but that's going to help you in the long run. If you find out that you're short a piece because you've been cutting them across, remember that one of the ways that you can put your pieces of brown together is to have have a strip, have the other strip, and then you can see I got a little bit of material here, and then it also does the same on the top. And I drew a line from that edge down to this edge, and you sew that and then cut outside of that line right here. And when you open it up, you're going to have two pieces that go together really well, and all of your bulk is not going to come at the same place when you start working on other parts of the quilt. And the other thing is, when I was laying them out, I tended to be one short of the block, because if you look at the first row around, you've got 2 blocks. But then look what happens with the next block that's on the side. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 blocks now. And so you want to make sure, because what happens when they're laying there and you haven't taken out that 1/4 of an inch for each one of those blocks all the way down, it looks like you're going to have too many blocks. But once you start sewing them together, it really does a nice job. This has been a great take-along project to do hand stitching on. And depending on who you're making it for, or if you're just making it for your own fun, you can change off and do the sewing machine also. 121 of these little blocks can be quite a bit, but it can be done by hand. And then I just wanted to show you one more little thing about the tulip quilt, which is really coming along. I've got it folded up into 4ths, and you can see I've got one blue edge around the outside. And I started to think about putting a cream edge on it, and then I looked at it and I really like the way just the plain blue makes it look finished, so I probably leave it there. And this is Stephanie at Hightower Stitching. I hope this has been helpful. There's been a little more to this project as I go along, especially if you're a beginner, and don't panic. Just sew together and then look at what you have, because you want to make sure that you're keeping your points as much as you can together. And then look and see when you have yours laid out if there's one way that looks better when you turn those shapes. It's really kind of funny. You may not see it. If you enjoyed this, learned anything, if you're going along with our project, please subscribe and hit like. Anything that I might have forgotten or things you might need, I'll write in the description. And please feel free to leave comments. A lot of people get their questions answered because of the things that you say, and they find out things that they didn't know. Thank you.